TaskForce's Dane without them here. But we, you'll hear a lot of similar things, but we'll be looking at, we started looking at this from, an economic incentive. How do we support the businesses that are here? How do we create incentive for new businesses to either relocate here or for startups to start and stay in Pullman as long as possible? And then what are the factors in the community that help those businesses come and stay here, and also support the larger community that would then work for those businesses and then support our community. So we actually started with a SWOT analysis, which was really fun to do, and we really, as we came up with our recommendations, we started to really focus where the opportunities and the strengths blended with what we saw as the trends that would affect our ability to create economic incentives moving into 2040. And as part of that, we identified three core opportunities. And I don't think our mission statement's exactly correct, but we wanted to ensure that Pullman would be seen as a community that is enticing to the always controversial millennial generation and younger, and that may want to remain here or migrate here from urban communities, and position ourselves to enable existing large businesses to establish beachhead locations here, and to foster a startup community that is underpinned, I think, in large part by research that is going on at WSU, and making sure that we have all of those incentives in place. So we identified three projects, one small, one medium, and one large, with some sub-projects, action items under each of those. The first one, and I think we've already heard this, but we're coming at it from a different angle, is to make sure that we've equipped our city representatives, our citizens, our local community members, the Chamber of Commerce, and anyone else we can, to proudly and very loudly promote our economic opportunities. So what do we already have here? So I think we heard a little of this earlier, trying to figure out, what is our identity, what do we want people to say about Pullman, and making sure that everyone who is looking to create business here, to convince businesses to move here, has that information, at the tip of their tongue, at their fingertips, ready to send to anyone who is thinking about coming to Pullman, starting a new development, creating a business here. And part of that is to ensure that the the developers that want to come here and build, whether it's a new commercial building or whether it's a new residential plot, that they are aware that our zoning is a lot more flexible than it looks like online, and make sure that the planning department, the city websites, the literature that is out there, are the things that people are probably going to look at first when they're trying to decide, do I want to come to Pullman to live, to create my business, that they are able to see that Pullman is able, and in many cases willing, to rezone as necessary to enable multifamily use and to enable multi-use developments. We also thought that it would be very important for us to consider incentives such as sales tax rebates to bring in multi-use developments. We looked at a lot of data and reports, and the trend is really for a lot of folks to want to live in a community that has essential services within their neighborhood, that will have a neighborhood store, that will have a bar and restaurants and other things that are a part of that neighborhood, rather than having to always leave your neighborhood and go to a downtown, or to have to go to another side of town to go where all of the restaurants are, and to make sure that those types of businesses are integrated into the neighborhoods as we build out our town. So making sure that we're incentivizing grocery stores, restaurants, services, that sort of thing, as we build out these larger neighborhoods on the outskirts of town. We also think that we should make sure that we're equipped to advertise and promote to businesses where Eastern Washington tax and regulations would make us more competitive. So if you're a business like your T-Mobile or your Amazon or your Starbucks, and you're in King County, or you're on the western side of the state, and you're seeing all of this news about new income tax or new regulations or whatever it is, that we can put together packages, whether it's pamphlets, websites, videos, whatever makes sense, in order to incentivize those businesses to come here And we thought that, there in many cases, it is not as appropriate to compare ourselves to Moscow or the surrounding community as it is to compare ourselves to places where it is more expensive and it is more difficult for a lot of businesses to do well, and incentivize them to put the next call center or the next manufacturing base or whatever it is in our community. Let's see. So we also focused on some of the other infrastructure incentives that have recently come in here. So, and again, this is all making sure that everyone can talk about these when the opportunity arises. Our airport is being upgraded right now, which means that we should be able to take on larger aircraft, more flights, possibly even more routes than just always flying back and forth to Seattle. And so that should be an incentive for businesses to come here. We also have excellent internet fiber, and in the surrounding communities, like Colfax and Palouse, if Northwest Fiber is successful, that high-speed internet will be available in a lot of areas. And then, of course, as a WSU person, I cannot forget that any of these businesses that would come here or would start here have that proximity to WSU. Which means that, of course, we have our very strong research and other programs that those businesses could utilize, but it's also a great source of internships and employees as the students graduate. And, of course, because we have a huge number of spouses for folks that would work at the university, having these businesses locate here is a great way to make sure that everyone in the family has a job and is happy with their job. Let's see. We also, in terms of this marketing of Pullman being a place for businesses to come, would think that we should partner with that advertising with the adjacent towns. So I mentioned like Colfax and Palouse, to make sure that the people who are coming out of the Seattle environment or wanting to move away from Spokane to live in a smaller community know that we have large plots of land here. You can buy a big house, you can have a big yard, you can have a non-connected house, and you can do that on the cheap here compared to those places, and that can be seen as an incentive for the businesses to be here because their employees will be happier being able to have the lifestyle that they've chosen. So most of that small effort project is really about communication, making sure that the folks at our Chamber of Commerce, that our citizens, the folks that we work with at WSU, really understand what are the things that are great about Pullman from a business perspective, and why would businesses want to come here not only for their own economic interests but for their employees as well. So project number 2 is to standardize and enforce community standards for building roads and other new developments. We heard other folks talking about this as well. I think this folds into the visual appeal with our entrances, making sure that the town is welcoming and beautiful visually as you come in. So it looks like we have pride in our community, we support our community. But more specifically, we would like to talk about how we could encourage a vibrant and livable downtown. Some folks mentioned that we have a lot of buildings that are blighted or unoccupied right now. It's not very attractive. We have a lot of areas downtown that could be nicer from a pathway perspective. The visual appeal is lacking in a lot of areas. And if we're going to have new properties like the Evolve on Main come in, and we're going to encourage other types of developments where we have people living downtown and hopefully spending their time and their money downtown, we have to make sure that there are standards that are enforced to make sure that the buildings don't run into disrepair and that people want to spend that time downtown. This fits really well with the pop-up restaurant idea, or having small business, almost incubator type space for small businesses in the downtown area, that sort of thing. I think we could make some plans to take advantage of those spaces that right now are not being utilized and do something very helpful with those. For new developments, and this would be both residential and commercial, you want to make sure that we're consistently enforcing things like sidewalk installation, setbacks, traffic control, and really try to stop using all of these arterials to go through those neighborhoods. And I think this kind of folds into number 3. making sure, thinking about how we can implement infrastructure and road plans that take the commercial traffic out of the downtown. And this helps everyone because it makes the downtown cleaner, it makes the air more breathable, it makes it more healthy. It would enable us to make the streets, the parking, and everything else more livable, more walkable. We could do things that you can't have when you have that much traffic going through the downtown. And I think it would make everybody a lot happier. So we also talked a lot about how we could use the space along the river, around the Puffer Belly Depot, and the river walk right now, trying to incentivize people to develop that area into multi-use. That could be both living area and small businesses, both restaurants and service industry. And we think that there's a really big opportunity in that area along the riverfront, where it's just, they're poorly kept buildings right now. And I think with some effort and some incentives, we could turn that into a beautiful walkable downtown. And that fits not only with creating new business opportunities downtown and creating the community down in that area, but when you're trying to bring in a big business, or when Schweitzer is trying to bring in new people, or when WSU has a startup and we're trying to convince them to stay here, we want to make sure that they see opportunities for their employees to be happy, to have jobs for their families, and all of that. And so having all of those things fits in with the overall economic development initiative. So I think that's it. I'm sorry we don't have any pretty slides. It's the business
great job,
side.
Travis.
But if anybody has questions, I'm happy to answer them or force my compatriots to answer.